We're going to do this by completing the square. We've got it all set up the way we want it. So we do what? Take the b, write it down. Divide by 2. Now, you do not change this to 2.5. That's not going to work. You leave it as a fraction. Since it doesn't simplify, right, you leave it and you simply square the whole thing, which will be 25 over 4. What do I do with this? Add it to both sides. So it's a plus 25 over 4 plus 25 over 4. And now I should have a perfect square here. Let's work it out and see what happens. X squared is, x, my sign is, plus, and what goes here? Well, it's the square root of that. How did I get that?
5 over 2.
I got 5 over 2. That's how I got it, by squaring this, right? So the square root of this is 5 over 2. We're just going to go right back to this is what goes in here. Question. Is this really 5? Well, what's 5 halves plus 5 halves? 10 halves. What's 10 halves? 5 times 2. Oops. What do we do here?
5 times 2
Oh, I'm sorry, you don't double it because we added it together. If 5 halves and 5 halves is 10 halves, which is 5. Equals. Now here's where you have to do a little bit more work. You have to add these two together. How do I do that?
Common denominator.
I need to make it's going to be a fraction. I need a common denominator.
4.
That's why you need to be quiet and listen.
You gotta leave that part in the tape.
Everybody heard you, and your face is really red.
What is that?
Okay. Shh. Common denominator is 4, 4, and 4. Right? I put it here. I put them up here. The 4's cancel. So what I do is, I go 4 times 3 is 12. It's negative. I put it here. Negative 12 plus 25. 25 minus 12 is 13. I put it here, and I combine them so it all goes in the right spot. I had 13 over 4. Everybody with me?
Yeah.
So it's a little bit more work, but you can do this. Come on, it's not hard.
Yeah, it is.
Then, square root. Square root. Over here, the square root is x plus 5 halves equals, leave the space, plus and minus, the square root of 13 over, no, over 2. Because it's the square root of 4. And by the way, notice my line goes beyond the square root sign, because the square root of 13 is on top, but the 2 is on the bottom without the square root, because I took the square root of 4. The only way, it's not square root of 13 over 2. It's the square root of 13 divided by the whole number 2. Okay? So most of the time, not every time, but most of the time, this will be a perfect square on the bottom. And then I take the 5 halves and put it over in front. Negative 5 halves. That's gone. There's our answer.
Here.
What?
It's on your bar.
There it is.
There it is.
Okay. All right, so quiet down. We only get 5 minutes. Here's what I do. I need to move the 5, I need to fix the 3, right? I do the 3 first, because it saves me a step. I get rid of the 3 by dividing by 3, dividing by 3, and dividing by 3, and dividing by 3. That cancels. I now have x squared plus 7/3 x space equals a negative 5/3. So I do the 3 first, then I rewrite it. This one, and this one goes to the other side and change the sign. So I'm doing both movements at one time rather than rewriting the problem twice. Now I'm ready to actually do the problem. What do I do first? I take b. And I do what? I divide it by 2. However, it's already a fraction, right? What's the same as division by 2?
Multiplying by half.
Multiplying by a half. So if it's a fraction, instead of doing the division, we multiply by 1/2, which is the same thing, but I don't have a fraction inside of a fraction. It's just easier to do. So I'm dividing by 2, but instead of dividing by 2, I multiply by 1/2, which now gives me 7/6, which I now have to square. So you have to take your fraction, multiply by the half, and then you get the answer, and then you have to square it. So I now get 49/36. Now it's the same thing, you just have to do a little bit more work because the fractions are the problem. What do I do with this? Plug it in both sides. Okay? And over here, parentheses squared. How do I get x squared? Sine. What goes here? 7/6, the square root of that, or the number that I used to get that. Equals. What do I do over here? No problem.
I'm lost in the fraction.
Well, then, it's just, all it is doing fraction. We've already done them all before. What do I do now? How do I add these? Common denominator. What's my common denominator? 36. What do I do with the 36? I put it on top of everything. Same thing we've been doing for 2 years. Right? It's not different. 36 goes on top, and the 36 cancels. And 3 goes into 36 12 times. So I now have 12 times 5 is 60, and it's a negative, plus 49, which is a negative 11. Take the square root. I get x plus 7/6 equals, leave a space, plus and minus the square root of a negative 11 all over the square root of 36, which is 6. 7/6. Move it to the other side, becomes negative 7/6. And we're done, except there's one more thing we have to do. Which we have not talked about yet, because I skipped that. We'll come back to it. Here's what happens. You can now have a negative inside the square root sign. That makes it an impossible problem. What we do with a negative, every time we have a negative inside, we rewrite that answer. The actual answer is x equals a negative 7/6 plus and minus fraction. 6 stays on the bottom, and we have a square root of 11. When we take the negative that's inside out, and we put an I right there. Take the square root, take the negative, stop. If there is a negative inside the radical sign, you take it out, and put it in front, and you put an I there. The negative goes away, and you put an I there, and you have a square root of 11 over 6. No big thing. Now, we're going to talk more about that next week, or later this week or next week.
Sure.
That's all you have to do right now. And that's our answer.